Iran's survival advantage. Another strong insight from the article is the idea that Iran may have won simply by surviving. In asymmetric conflicts, survival can be a powerful form of success. Countries like Iran don't necessarily need to defeat a stronger opponent militarily. They just need to avoid collapse. And that appears to be exactly what happened. Despite facing a superior military force, Iran endured the Dabat, maintained internal control, and preserved its position in the region. In some ways, this resilience may even strengthen its image domestically and internationally. From that perspective, the outcome becomes much less one-sided than it initially appears. The illusion of a clean ending. What makes this situation even more complex is the nature of the ceasefire. The article correctly highlights that this was not a decisive conclusion, but rather a pause filled with ambiguity. Key issues, especially Iran's nuclear program, remain unresolved. This creates a dangerous illusion, a sense that the conflict has been handled when in reality, the core tensions are still very much alive. In modern geopolitics, unresolved conflicts often resurface in more complicated and unpredictable ways. Narrative versus reality. One of the most thought-provoking elements of the article is its focus on narrative control. In today's world, winning the narrative can be just as important as winning the war itself. Political leaders often frame outcomes in ways that strengthen their position domestically, even if the reality is more nuanced. Trump's declaration of victory fits this pattern. It is clear, confident, and politically effective. But the article pushes us to look beyond that messaging and ask, what actually changed on the ground? And the answer, based on the analysis, is not enough to justify the claim of a decisive victory. A shift in power, not a resolution. Rather than a clear win or loss, the war appears to have created a shift in balance. The United States demonstrated its military dominance, reinforcing its global image of strength. At the same time, Iran demonstrated resilience, maintaining its influence, and potentially gaining leverage in key strategic areas. This dual outcome suggests that the war did not resolve the conflict. It merely reshaped it. The bigger concern: long-term consequences. In my view, the most important takeaway is not who won, but what comes next. Conflicts like this rarely end cleanly. They tend to evolve. The unresolved nuclear issue, regional tensions, and shifting alliances all point to a future where instability may continue or even intensify. Declaring victory too early can be risky. It may reduce urgency for real solutions and create a false sense of closure. Final verdict. Overall, I find the article's argument convincing and necessary. It challenges a simplistic narrative and replaces it with a more realistic, albeit uncomfortable, perspective. This was not a clear victory. It was not a decisive defeat. It was a strategic gray zone, where both sides achieved something, but neither achieved everything. And in modern warfare, that may be the most honest definition of winning. Did Donald Trump really win the Iran war? Or is this one of the most complicated victories in modern history? After weeks of intense conflict, explosions, and rising global tension, a ceasefire has finally been reached, and Trump is calling it a total and complete victory. But behind that bold claim, the reality may be far more complicated. The official narrative. From the White House perspective, the message is simple. America showed strength. Iran was pressured, and a deal was forced onto the table. The war itself was launched with clear goals: to cripple Iran's military capabilities, stop its nuclear ambitions, and weaken its influence across the Middle East. And yes, militarily, the United States did strike hard. Iran suffered damage. Its infrastructure took hits, and its economy was shaken. So on the surface, it looks like a win. The reality on the ground. But here's where things get complicated. Despite weeks of war, Iran's regime is still in power. Its nuclear capabilities remain intact, and its regional influence still very much alive. Even more surprising, Iran now holds one of the most powerful geopolitical tools in the world: control over the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway carries a huge portion of global oil supply, and now Iran has leverage over it. Some reports even suggest Iran could charge tolls or restrict access, giving it enormous economic and strategic power. So the question becomes, did the US weaken Iran, or accidentally make it more powerful? the ceasefire that solves nothing. The ceasefire itself is fragile. Both sides interpret it differently. Key issues, like nuclear development and regional conflicts, remain unresolved. Even allies are confused. There are disagreements about whether the war truly ended, whether regions like Lebanon are included, and what the long-term plan actually is. In fact, analysts say the war ended not with clear victory, but with unresolved tension and strategic ambiguity. The bigger picture. Zoom out, and the global consequences are massive. Oil prices surged, markets became unstable, and international alliances were strained. Meanwhile, Iran, despite damage, may have achieved something critical. Leverage. Not victory in the traditional sense, but a stronger position than before the war began. Some experts even argue that in modern warfare, ending up in a better position than your opponent is the real definition of winning. So, who really won? Trump claims victory. Iran claims victory. But the truth? There may be no clear winner. The US demonstrated military dominance, but failed to achieve its biggest strategic goals. Iran absorbed, but emerged with new power on the global stage. And the world? Left dealing with higher risks, unstable energy markets, and a Middle East that's more unpredictable than ever. The big question: what exactly did Donald Trump win in the Iran war? After weeks of escalating tensions, military strikes, and global anxiety, a ceasefire was declared. And almost immediately, Trump declared victory. But in modern warfare, victory isn't always clear. Sometimes, what looks like a win hides a much deeper story. The claim of victory. From Washington's perspective, the narrative is simple. The United States showed strength. It acted decisively. It forced Iran to respond under pressure. And ultimately, it pushed Iran toward a deal. On paper, this looks like a textbook success, a display of power leading to negotiation. But is that the full picture? To understand the outcome, we need to go back to the beginning. The war wasn't random. It had clear strategic goals: to weaken Iran's military capabilities, to halt its nuclear ambitions, and to reduce its influence across the Middle East. These weren't small objectives. They were ambitious and difficult. Military success, or just damage. There's no denying the military impact. US strikes hit Iranian targets hard. Infrastructure was damaged. Military assets were degraded. From a purely tactical standpoint, the United States demonstrated overwhelming force. But here's the key question. Did these strikes change Iran's long-term capabilities? Iran's still standing. Despite the damage, Iran is still standing. Its government remains intact. Its leadership is still in control. And its strategic ambitions haven't disappeared. In fact, Iran may have absorbed the darbat and adapted to them. History shows that survival itself can be a form of victory. The nuclear question. One of the biggest goals was stopping Iran's nuclear program. But after the war, there's no clear evidence that this goal was achieved. Iran's nuclear ambitions remain unresolved. Its capabilities may have been disrupted, but not eliminated. Which raises a critical concern. Was the war able to solve the very problem it was meant to fix? Regional influence remains. Another objective was reducing Iran's influence in the region. But across the Middle East, Iran still maintains strong connections and influence. Its network didn't disappear overnight. In some areas, instability caused by the war may have even created new opportunities for influence. The power of leverage. And then there's the issue of leverage. Iran still holds a powerful card. Its position near critical global trade routes. This gives it influence far beyond its borders. Even after suffering damage, Iran may have strengthened its bargaining position, not by winning militarily, but by shaping the strategic landscape, a war without a clear winner. So where does that leave us? The United States showed strength, but didn't fully achieve its strategic goals. Iran took damage, but remains a key player in the region. Both sides claim victory. But neither side achieved everything they wanted. This is what modern conflict often looks like. Unclear, complex, and unresolved. The real outcome. In the end, the Iran war may not be about who won, but about what changed. The balance of power shifted. Global tensions increased. And the risk of future conflict remains. Trump may claim a win, but history will decide whether it was a real victory, or just the beginning of something bigger.